The Whistling Man of Maple Street. Alex Chen had lived in Maple Estates his entire life, but it wasn't until the summer before junior year that he began to notice the whistling. It always started after sunset, a faint melody that drifted between the identical two-story houses with their perfectly trimmed hedges and coordinated mailboxes. "You guys hear that?" Alex asked, sitting on the curb outside Jamie Torres's house with their friend Casey Miller. Jamie looked up from his camera, the one he'd saved up for all year, and shook his head. "Hear what?" "That whistling," Alex insisted, like someone's trying to call a dog. Casey shivered despite the warm evening air. "My mum says we shouldn't talk about the whistling." Alex and Jamie exchanged glances. In the 16 years they'd all been friends, practically since birth, Casey had never mentioned this before. "What do you mean?" Jamie asked, suddenly interested. He pointed his camera toward Casey, the red recording light blinking steadily. Casey looked uncomfortable, glancing toward the darkening street. "It's nothing. Just something my grandma used to say. Old people stuff." But Alex could tell it wasn't nothing. Casey's family had lived in Maple Estates the longest. His grandfather had been one of the original homeowners back in the 70s when the subdivision was first built. "Come on, Case," Alex pressed. "If there's something weird about the neighborhood, we should know." Casey sighed, lowering his voice even though the street was empty. "My grandma called him the Whistling Man, said he was looking for replacements." "Replacements for what?" Jamie asked, leaning closer. Casey looked at both his friends, then up at the streetlights as they flickered on one by one. "For the children he lost." The next day, they met at the public library. Casey had been reluctant to say more the previous night, but Alex wouldn't let it go. Something about the whistling had gotten under his skin. "My grandma made me promise never to talk about it," Casey explained, fidgeting with his phone. "She said talking about him invites him in." "That's just superstition," Jamie said, setting up his camera on the library table. "I want to document this. Could be our chance to make something that actually gets views." The library was nearly empty on the summer weekday. An elderly librarian dozed at the reference desk, and a mother supervised her young children in the kids section across the building. "So what's the full story?" Alex pressed. Casey lowered his voice. "Back in 1979, there was a teacher at Maple Hills Elementary, Mr. Sullivan. He taught 5th grade. Alex nodded. They'd all gone to Maple Hills, the aging elementary school at the edge of the neighborhood. Apparently, he started acting strange, whistling constantly, staying late. Then one day, 3 students stayed after school for detention. Casey swallowed hard. They never came home. Jamie zoomed his camera in on Casey's face. What happened to them? The official story was that Mr. Sullivan had some kind of breakdown. He killed them. Then he covered himself in chemicals from the science closet and set himself on fire. Alex felt a chill run through him. That can't be true. We would have heard about this. That's the thing, Casey said. My grandma says the neighborhood made a pact to never talk about it. They didn't want property values to drop. They renamed the school, rebuilt the wing where it happened. Everyone agreed to just forget. That's insane, Jamie said, but he looked excited rather than horrified. We need to find proof. The next week was spent digging. The local newspaper archives had nothing, but Jamie found an old community newsletter in a box of his parents' things that mentioned a tragic incident requiring the renovation of Maple Hill's East Wing in 1979. Alex discovered the old yearbook from that year. 3 5th-grade student photos had been carefully removed, the pages neatly sliced. When he showed his mom, she quickly closed the book. Where did you get this? she demanded. The library archives, Alex lied. Mom, what happened at my elementary school before I was born? His mother's face went pale. Nothing happened, Alex, and I don't want you spreading rumors that could hurt our community. That night, the whistling seemed louder. Alex could hear it clearly through his bedroom window, a cheerful tune that somehow made his skin crawl. He texted the group chat. Alex, guys, it's really loud tonight. Casey, don't listen to it, don't acknowledge it, asterisk. Jamie, I'm recording it. Meet me at the playground. Now ... Alex knew he shouldn't go, but 20 minutes later, he was cutting through backyards toward the small playground at the center of Maple Estates. Casey was already there, sitting rigidly on a swing. Jamie's by the slides, Casey whispered. He's been acting weird. Alex spotted Jamie crouched in the shadows, camera raised. The whistling was clearer here, echoing between the houses. Jamie, Alex called softly. When Jamie turned, his face looked strange in the dim light from the distant street lamp. He was smiling too widely. I figured it out, Jamie said. It's not just a sound, it's a pattern. Listen. The whistling did have a rhythm, 3 short notes, 2 long, repeated. It's in 3s, Jamie whispered, always in 3s. Over the next few days, Alex noticed changes in Jamie. He became obsessed with his recordings, playing them back at different speeds. He started whistling himself, the same tune, when he didn't realize others were listening. We need to stop this, Alex told Casey as they walked home from Jamie's house. He barely slept all weekend. Did you see how his room smelled like something was burning? Casey nodded grimly. My grandma would say he's being chosen. Chosen for what? To continue the pattern. The whistling man needs 3 new children. Every generation. Alex stopped walking. That's just a story, Casey. Then why did I find these? Casey pulled out his phone, showing Alex photos of 3 detention slips dated May 15th, 1979. The names matched the missing yearbook photos. They were hidden in my grandma's attic in an envelope marked Never Open. When they confronted Jamie with their concerns, he laughed it off. You guys are being dramatic, he said, but his eyes were bloodshot, his movements jerky. I'm documenting an urban legend. This could get us into film school. But that night, Alex woke to furious tapping on his window. Casey stood in his yard, terrified. Jamie's at the school, he gasped. He texted me to meet him there, said he found where it happened. Maple Hills Elementary was dark and still as they approached. A side door near the east wing stood slightly open. I don't like this, Alex whispered. We have to get him out of here, Casey insisted. The halls were pitch black. They used their phone flashlights, following the sound of faint whistling until they reached an old storage room. The door was plastered with safety warnings and a small, discreet memorial plaque that Alex had never noticed during his years at the school. Inside, Jamie stood facing the wall, whistling. 3 desks had been arranged in the center of the room. Jamie, Alex called. When Jamie turned, his expression was blank. They're coming, he said flatly. He's found his replacements. We're leaving, now. Alex grabbed Jamie's arm, but his friend felt unnaturally hot. Don't you smell it? Jamie asked, sniffing the air. Something's burning. The odor hit Alex then, a chemical, acrid smell that made his eyes water. Casey backed toward the door. We need to go! No! Jamie screamed, suddenly animated. You can't leave detention early. That's what made him angry. He lunged at Casey, knocking him into one of the desks. Alex tried to intervene, but Jamie was unnaturally strong, his skin burning to the touch. "Jamie, this isn't you. Stop," Alex pleaded. "It is me," Jamie said, his voice now intertwining with another, deeper tone. "It's always been me. Waiting, whistling, watching you break the rules." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Jamie produced a lighter from his pocket, the same one he'd used to illuminate spooky stories during countless backyard sleepovers. But now, his eyes reflected the flame with an intensity that wasn't Jamie at all. "The cycle must continue," Jamie whispered, but the voice wasn't entirely his. 3 students, 1 teacher. Purification by fire. Casey managed to break free from Jamie's grip and scrambled toward the door, but it slammed shut seemingly on its own. The temperature in the room began to rise dramatically. "Jamie, listen to me," Alex pleaded, trying to reach his friend through whatever had taken hold. "This isn't real. You're hallucinating or something." Jamie smiled, a twisted expression that contorted his familiar face. "I always chose the curious ones, the ones who wouldn't let sleeping dogs lie." He gestured to the 3 desks. "Take your seats. Detention has begun." The smell of chemicals grew stronger. Alex noticed with horror that Jamie's clothes appeared damp, a clear liquid seeping through the fabric. The same liquid was pooling around the legs of the 3 desks. "Casey," Alex whispered. "On 3, we rush him together. 1, 2. Before they could move, Jamie began to convulse. His body jerked unnaturally, his head tilting at an impossible angle as the whistling grew deafening, no longer coming from Jamie, but surrounding them from all sides. The lights in the storage room flickered on, revealing walls covered in decades of desperate scratches, and a floor stained with dark splotches that no amount of renovation could completely remove. Behind Jamie, a figure began to take shape, translucent at first, then increasingly solid. The form of a tall man in outdated clothes, his skin bubbled and charred, his lips pursed in a perpetual whistle. "Mr. Sullivan," Casey gasped. Jamie's eyes rolled back in his head as he raised the lighter. 3 students failed to complete their detention. The punishment was clear. Alex lunged forward, knocking the lighter from Jamie's hand. It skittered across the floor, away from the pooling chemicals. "Run!" he shouted to Casey. Casey slammed his body against the door repeatedly until it finally gave way. They tumbled into the hallway, the whistling reaching a fever pitch behind them. "We can't leave Jamie!" Alex cried, turning back. Through the doorway, they could see Jamie standing still, the shadowy figure of the whistling man now fully merged with him. Jamie's eyes found Alex's, and for a brief moment, lucidity returned to them. "Run," Jamie mouthed. Then he retrieved the lighter, flicked it on and dropped it. The flash was blinding. Heat blasted through the doorway as Alex and Casey scrambled backward, the fire alarm suddenly shrieking to life above them. Through the flames, Alex could see Jamie standing unnaturally still, arms outstretched, as fire engulfed him and the 3 empty desks. Most disturbing of all, Jamie was smiling. The official story was that Jamie Torres had broken into the school to film a project and accidentally caused a fire. The east wing of Maple Hills Elementary was closed again for renovations. No one mentioned the whistling man, not the firefighters who couldn't explain why the fire had been contained to just 1 room, burning in a perfect circle around 3 points. Not the police who questioned Alex and Casey separately, their parents hovering nervously. Not the school principal who oversaw the hasty installation of a new memorial plaque. Casey withdrew into himself, refusing to leave his house for weeks. His grandmother had suffered a stroke the night of the fire and passed away without regaining consciousness. Alex found himself alone with the truth. and with the whistling that continued each night, now seeming to come from just outside his window rather than from a distance. 2 months after the incident, Casey finally agreed to meet Alex at the rebuilt playground. The autumn air was crisp, the maple trees beginning to turn vibrant red. "We should have never gone looking," Casey said, his voice hollow. "My grandma warned me." "It wasn't our fault," Alex insisted, though the words rang false even to his own ears. Casey looked up sharply. "Then why do I hear the whistling everywhere now? Why do I smell burning whenever I close my eyes?" Alex had no answer. They sat in silence as the sun began to set. "He only needed one, you know," Casey finally said. "Not 3. Just one to continue the cycle, to become the new whistling man." "What are you talking about?" Casey's eyes had a distant look. "I found my grandma's journal. She was there in 1979. She was supposed to have detention that day, but skipped it. She survived because someone took her place." A chill ran through Alex. "So Jamie?" "Jamie was never the target. The whistling man was looking for his replacement, not more victims." Casey's voice dropped to a whisper. "And now Jamie's looking for his." Alex felt his blood freeze as Casey slowly turned to face him. Casey's eyes reflected the dying light unnaturally, and his lips were pursed as if ready to whistle. "Do you hear it now, Alex?" Casey asked, his voice overlapping with another familiar tone. "Jamie's calling you to detention." From somewhere behind the line of perfect suburban houses, smoke began to rise against the darkening sky, and the faint smell of burning chemicals drifted through Maple Estates once more. The whistling had begun again. "Hey there, horror fans. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale of the whistling man, don't forget to like and subscribe." "Just kidding. That would attract his attention. Better keep scrolling. He can smell when you linger too long."